everybody. Glad to see everybody's back, and hopefully everybody has got a good start on their work. Just thought I'd let you have a look-see. Here are my 30 blocks that I've been working on so that we can keep up. And over here is what is left over of my trimmings. Not much, if I must say. And I have also prepared my 2.5-inch strips. For those of you who are doing yardage, that's my 2.5-inch strips. We'll be talking about those shortly here this morning on how to do sashings. And also, way back in the corner there behind my junk is the little brown strips that I'm going to use for my sashings. So we'll be talking about those as well. So here we go. Again, I want to remind everybody there's not a lot of waste in this particular project. Let's get started with today's lesson. Here we go. Okay, what you are looking at now is what I consider my design wall since my sewing room all of a sudden went under construction. My husband decided to clean a closet while I was working, and my studio turned into something else. So, okay, this is my layout wall on my king-size bed in my bedroom. I am trying not to give you any of the edges. I'm using the layout that is in your instructions, just because it was easy, it was quick, I'd already done it, but you can twist and turn your blocks however you like. Now what I'm going to do is I will keep this layout laying here, and then I'm going to pick up one row at a time, and that way I don't get mussed up. So let's go from there, and then now I'm going to move us back to the quote-unquote sewing room studio and start putting these rows together. See you in a minute. Alrighty, we're back in our sewing / studio. First thing we're going to talk about is the jelly roll. The jelly roll, of course, is made up of all the 2.5-inch strips, and just like your layer cake, if you got the same grouping from the same line of fabric, they will probably have this pretty much the similar fabrics in the jelly roll that they are in the layer cakes. But of course in smaller strips they don't look quite the same, but they have the same value. Value is the color intensities, the intensity of the colors. So this is what we're going to be looking at in this case. What we want to think about is, do we want a dark value between our rows? What do we want for our borders? This particular set I'm working with here is from Yardage, and if you'll notice I only have 3 colors here, and number 4 is my sashing, and it is also, I will grab these right here, it is also my inner border. So this pile over here are my borders. We'll be talking about those down the road here, but right now we're going to talk about sashing. My inner border is the same color as my sashing, as per preference. When I did the one that is in the photograph, that was the original inspiration for this, I went through and selected a setting. I needed 7 pieces of each fabric, or each value for each layer of my borders. So I selected those out, and then I selected my sashings. My sashings are all of the black value in the set that I had, and in this case, because I'm using Yardage, I'm using my browns. I hope that's making sense. Okay, so if I am using my jelly rolls, we're going to work with jelly rolls because that's what the whole point of this whole thing was, is I'm going to have 2.5-inch strips, but for the sashings, I need 1.25-inch strips. So I'll take my 2.5-inch strip, and yes, this is how I came up with it, because remember, this was challenging my Swiss cheese board brain, sending it on vacation. I couldn't use Yardage because I was limited to a 2.5-inch strip. So the sashings became 1.25-inch cut, which means they finish at 3/4 of an inch. So that's why I have those sizes. They were dictated by the width of the fabric of the jelly roll. So go through your jelly roll and pick out some groups of values. So you can do dark, light, medium, or however. But don't think of colors and prints. Try to keep the values the same. Value, again, is the intensity of the color. This would be one value of that green and that green. These are two values of green. And this would be the same thing over here. I've got a value of a brown and a value of a brown. So this is what you're going to look for in your collections of fabrics. So again, we're sorting fabrics. So once we get that all done, you're going to cut for sashing. You will take 3 of your jelly roll strips of the value that you have selected, and you're going to cut them in half so that you have 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/4 inch. So these, you'll need 3 of those. So now you have 6 strips, and you'll cut them into 24 8.5 inch long pieces. And that is going to do the in-between strips of your sashings. You will also need 5 more strips of the 1 1/2 inch. So you're going to take enough, you're going to need 4. Why did I say 5? We have 5 rows, and we need 4. So we need enough our 1 1/4 inch sashings to go across. And in the instructions, I tell you that your rows should average about 43 inches. So you should be able to use 1 full strip side to side, 1 length of a jelly roll cut, or if you're using yardage, it's the selvage to selvage cut. And again, you're going to cut your pieces in half to make that number that you need. Okay, so I'm going to put a few of these together, and then I'm going to show you how to measure this. I don't think anybody really needs to see me sew at this point, but I'm going to show you a quick note. On my first one here, when I pick up a row, you can see how my row is picked up here. Here's one, there's another, 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 another. I think of, okay, the direction I picked them up was left to right. So I have left to right, and I keep all of the same side that's going to end up with a sashing on it in the same direction. It's just a force of habit. So I'm going to take my first strip here, if I can get it off of the stack, and take my first one here. Not everybody will have to do this, but please, again, if you feel like you need to pin, please pin. Pin on this end and pin on this end. Your blocks are 8.5 inches long. Your sashings are 8.5 inches long, so they better fit together. So there you go. You could stack these if you want to, or just add them to each one. What I do is I go through and add my sashing to each one of these sides so I can chain piece them, and then when I cut them off the machine, I put them back together and I'll have one long. I'll show you that in a second as soon as I've got this all sewn together. See you in a minute. Okay, here we are. I've got my whole unit sewed together. I have my little sashings in between. You're going to press your sashing seams in towards the sashing. That also helps the row stay nice and flat. And there is a trick about that. This causes the sashing to kind of puff up a little bit. And it helps if you do stitch in the ditch or however, ends up with just a little more puff under there. It's just one of those little secret things, because if you fold it away, it makes it go in. Our eyes play really interesting tricks on us. So here we are. We've got our strip. Now, remember I told you don't go cutting up your long strips into pieces yet? Oh, I got little threads. Gosh, for name that. Why in the world would you have threads when you're sewing? Okay, so right here, I'm going to take it, and yes, I still have my selvages on the ends, is I'm going to find the center of my row and the center of my sashing strip. So I'll just I do this the easy way, ladies. Oh yes, and then the gentlemen, if we're still out there, and they haven't run away and left us yet, I just take it, find my center, and I either mark it with a pin or just make sure that I can crease it. And I've got a little crease right here. I know you can't see that. Of course, it's green on green. Why would I pick another color? I don't know. And I'm going to take my sashing strip, and this is going to allow me to give a guess. I'm not doing it by math. I'm going to put it on here and just kind of measure out. I can see already, because I need to get rid of my selvage right here, that I've got a problem. And if I go in this direction, scooch all the way down, I'm still short over here. So I'm going to need to make an entire strip on for my long stashings. Now remember, we talked about the fact that you needed 5 of these 1 1/4 inch strips because we have 5 long rows. Well, because I need an extra one, I am going to cut 6, and then I'm going to sew them all into one long string. And that way I'll have a good idea of what I need. So once I have sewed them all into one long string, then I can cut the lengths that I need. To do that, many of us have done binding after binding after binding after binding, and we all understand how to do the diagonal seam. The diagonal seam is very simple. You take, let me move things out of the way here. We do not need our front and center of the row at the moment. We're going to take our strip, right sides together with the second one. Now the reason I leave my selvages on, they're guides. And the neat thing about a guide is I can have them hang off on both ends. And you see right here where this comes in like this, and right here, right there, I've got 2 V-points. And I know if I sew right V-point to V-point, I get a better angle. Whereas if we do the old way that we were all taught back in the ancient times, which none of us will mention, where you put your ends even, you can't see those 2 ears. So by leaving those selvages on, and I know I need to cut them off, I can use them as a guide. Little bonus info there for those of you who have never tried that. And sew diagonal, and I'll get a nice clean straight seam. And then when I open it out, I get my perfect little miter, and you can't see it. So I'm going to string a whole bunch of these together, 6 of them actually, because remember I cut 5, so I'm going to cut another one, and then I will cut off the pieces I need. Okay, so here is the trick to that. Every one of us has put a border on, added sashings. Don't measure your quilt blocks rows out on the outer edges. That is where the stretch is. All of the edges have stretches along there. You need to measure directly down the middle of your piece. Now, because I do not have a little, as you can see in your video area here, my mat is 36 inches. This is my cutting area, this is my work area. I do not have anything bigger than that in this area to work with. So I have to kind of adjust. I'm going to release enough of my tape here, and I'm going to measure straight down the middle of my strip. So right from here to here is 31. Oops, let me get over here in my fingers. I got off the map and then I looked over at my screen. You can't see me. Okay, so I'm going to use 26. I'm going to put my finger here. I will fold this up and drag that along. Hold my measuring device and make sure that all my seams are out, and I am coming up with 43.5 inches. So I need 5 strips, yes, 5 strips at 43.5 inches. Don't just add on a piece to each one. You want enough variances in where your diagonal seams end up that when you put your pieces together, nobody can see where those joints are. So that's what our next step is to put those sashings in, and then we're on to the next level. Boy, are we flying along. And then we're going to sew that all together, and our center of our top is going to be done, ladies and gentlemen. Yay! And like I said, you know, I did the layout that I have in there. Here's my section 4 on my rows. That's my odd, and here's my other 2 section 4s. So mine's kind of hard to see, but some of them really look really cool when they come up with certain colors. So here we go. I'm off to make my long strips. See you in a bit. Okay, I've been sewing up a storm. I have my 6 strips out of my 5 strips out of my 6 strips that I sewed together. So there they are. And I'm going to take my 1 here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to locate the center of my sashing strip, fold it in half, put a pin. Then I'm going to do the same thing to my row. Oh, all of a sudden the brain went dead. Must be too much sniffing of the fabric. Okay. Now, one thing that we're all real good at is just slapping this on and sewing it. When you do borders, sashings, anything like that, remember I told you to measure down the middle. Even when we do that, we end up with a little extra on our sides because those are a little bit longer. First thing I'm going to do is going to pin to this one. I'm going to pin my far end here. And I'm going to match my center pin. Just like so. Let me give you a little hint. I am sorry about this little bug that seems to have crawled into my throat these last few videos. Okay, right along here, if you'll notice, this one's coming out pretty nice and straight. See it? I'm just holding both edges. If I take this other end down here and I go over and grab it and make sure that in, by George, look at that. I have no extras. Don't pull these edges. Just don't. Make sure they stay nice and flat and everybody will come out nice and happy. So what I'm going to do is going to make sure that we go from here to here and work only in this area because I don't want any of the excess to travel outside. Pinning is something that we all don't think about. We've all been taught different methods of pinning. I am right-handed, so I pin with my pins pointing to the left when I sew because I sew this way. I can pull my pins and just slide them over on my machine. If you're left-handed, you can put them on this side if you prefer. But if you put your pins perpendicular to your seam, you do not add any bubbles. A lot of people I've watched over the years, and I've been teaching for several years, we won't say how long. When I put my pin in, let me get one that you can probably see. I don't know why my lighting is so icky this time. But then I've got this pin, and if you'll see, it goes this way. What happens, you end up with a little bit of a bubble where the pin comes in and goes out. And that can cause a little excess fabric to build up as your presser foot slides forward on the fabric. And that top layer gets shifted along. Learning how to handle things like this is a wonderful thing when you're working with flannel. Flannel moves, flannel stretches, flannel does all kinds of naughty things. And if you learn how to handle flannel, you can handle any of those fabrics out there. Now remember, we have pushed our seam allowances in toward the sashing. So what I like to do, just so that I don't have to remember, yes, I don't like to remember a lot of things, is I will put a pin on each seam allowance. And it look like an overkill, but then when I come to it, I know I better watch what I'm doing. I am going to sew with my strip or my row down. The reason for that, the row has a little bit of extra fabric in it This is my more stable piece. The feed dogs are going to pull the extra fabric under a little bit faster. So I can always guarantee that I'm going to fit everything I want to fit between here and here is going to fit exactly between those two pins. So right to the pin, then pull the pin out. Don't think that you can sew over pins. This is the technician in me complaining. When you sew over a pin, yes, the machine does go over it. Yes, you will hear clatter clang if you hit it. What happens with our newer machines is that fine tuning of that needle going up and down at certain speeds hits that pin and throws it. And if you keep at it over and over and over, pretty soon your machine is out of whack and it's out of time, and you're seeing your local technician, and when they say, "What did you do?" and you say, "I don't know," we all as technicians go, "Yeah, sure. You ran over a pin and over a pin and over a pin." And it's not saying that one pin is not going to do it, but it happens often enough, sure. The old machines, we all say, yes, great-grandma's Singer did it just fine, and I don't know why mine won't do, and I paid $10,000 for it. Because great-grandma's Singer didn't have all these beautiful, delicate stitches on it. It was built for one thing, needle up and down, whack, whack, whack. No fine movements in any directions. So, okay. Enough of that speech on sewing machines. We're not talking sewing machines. We're talking about our quilt today. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is we're going to put our sashings on each row. And again, just like I did these, I will go and lay my quilt out again, make sure everybody is where I want it, put my sashings, and sew the rest of my top together. Just remember, right to the pin, pull the pin. Hopefully everybody will have their sashings on. It just takes a few minutes of patience and we all do just fine. So, okay, I'll see you in a bit with a full top assembled, and then guess what? We will be talking borders, and those get really fun because we get to play with mitered corners. If you'll see what I'm doing here as I'm talking to you, and it's not something you really have to fuss with. Just a little check, flip your seams in, and on we go. So I will see you as soon as we all have our sashings in, and I'll have mine put together, and then we will talk about borders. See you momentarily. Once you have a row that has one long segment on it, and then you've done your second one. Now when you go to put the next one on, as you can see up here, I've got two of them already together. I want to keep these two seams right here across from each other so that I don't have them kitty-wumpus. There we go with kitty-wumpus again. But okay, I want them directly across from each other just like this. So what I'm going to do to accomplish that is I'm going to transfer this seam to that side. So what I would do is I'm going to take a pin and come straight across just like this, making sure that I line up with my seam line. Again, straight across. Whoops, that one was a little off. With my seam line, just like so. And that way I know I've transferred these markings to this outside edge, and it makes it easier to line this up. And I would repeat it all the way down. Now when I get to the other end, let me do one right here quickly. You can go both ways. I usually go either way, depends on where my hands are. And you got that. So when I put this piece on, what I'm going to be looking for is the fact that I can take, this set of seams, line them right up with my pins, just like so. See, like that. And that way I'll pin that, pin my ends, and then I have whatever's left in between here to ease in, if there's any easing. But I know that these joints are going to join up beautifully and come out so that they look like this, straight across. We want them straight across and not kitty-wampus. So that's the way to transfer those points. So I just wanted to give you that little clue so you can continue adding your long strips in between your rows, because when we're done, we want the center of our top all put together. See you in a few minutes. Okay. I have a couple of rows already put together here, and all my joints are nicely connected, coming together. And I am working on, like I said, I've got the layout from what we had in the directions. And like I say, this is nice, easy. I've got, they come out with little stars. Section 4 comes into a star. That's just me. But everybody, you guys can lay it out whichever you want. Get all of your sashings, and make sure to press your sashing seams towards the sashings. It's a little time consuming, but work slowly. Don't go dragging your iron over any of this, because these are really tiny little strips, and tiny strips stretch a lot more. If you have to press along these seams, just take the edge of the iron and gently, just kind of take the tip and just, just barely touch, like so. Don't go in and try to do anything putting your iron over the top until they are completely assembled. Just for the fact that those outer edges will, that's these outer edges I'm talking about, will stretch. So just nudge it with the tip of the iron along the edge if you have to. Otherwise, the good old finger pressing does just fine. It holds it in place, and that way we're good. And same thing with these guys. Now that these are nailed in between your blocks, you can come in and press them, but don't drag your iron on the raw edges of your blocks. So I'm going to let you guys go ahead and finish putting all your sashings in. On Monday, this we will be working on, or on the next video I should say, not next Monday. On the next video, we will be talking about borders and how to make the mitered corners. There's a little more detail in that. I tried to put the two together, but I think it'll be a little bit of an overload. So go ahead and finish up your sashings. Get yourself a nice big cup of tea or a cup of coffee and a donut or something really non-productive as far as nutrition. Sit down and say, I've accomplished something today. And I will see you in our next video. Bye-bye.